Hello, and thank you for joining me today for part 2 of this urban cycling adventure as we make our way from Birmingham to Wolverhampton using Route 5 and Route 81 of the National Cycle Network. In part 1 we made our way from Birmingham city centre along Route 5 and then Route 81 to where it crosses under the M5 motorway. In this part, we're going to finish the journey from the M5 all the way to Wolverhampton city centre. So we'll begin this video and continue our journey to Wolverhampton by crossing under the M5 motorway. I've crossed over the top of this motorway many times on my way to the southwest, but I've never had this view from below. It's actually quite an impressive structure here as it crosses the Birmingham mainline canal. As you'll know if you've driven this section of motorway, from the M6 junction to junction 3 of the M5, it's entirely elevated as it makes its way through the Sandwell Valley. But from just driving down the motorway, you'd have no idea of the engineering that went into this section when it was built between 1967 and 1970. As we make our way under the bridge, we come into what is known as the Black Country, or at least I've always seen the M5 as the boundary between Birmingham and the Black Country. Let me know if you think different. But it's generally accepted that the Black Country incorporates Walsall, West Brom, Wolverhampton, Sandwell and Dudley, and all the way down to Stourbridge. Although I have heard it said that no two yams will agree on where the Black Country starts and ends. The area was heavily industrialised in the early 1800s, with coal mines, steelworks, iron foundries and brickworks. And the black soot that was produced by these industries covered the area, and this is said to be the origin of the name Black Country, as everything was covered in black soot. It was one of those Black Country iron foundries that cast this bridge here that I'm just going underneath, that I should have actually gone over the top of to cross the canal to carry on Route 81. I quickly realised that I was on the wrong route as I knew I had to follow the main line of the canal, and looking back at my GoPro footage there was a couple of signs that I missed, although these are quite small signs, and that's my excuse and I'm sticking to it. I quickly turned around and made my way over the bridge and headed down the other side of the mainline canal and carried on my journey on Route 81. One of the things that struck me about this route is that it is a green corridor in what is still today a very industrial area. The canal was built to service the heavy industries in the area, bringing in raw materials and taking out finished product. It would have been a hive of activity in the early 1800s, and although today you can still hear and see the factories up against the canal, it's much quieter and provides, in my opinion, a much better route from Birmingham to Wolverhampton than either the Birmingham New Road or the M6, although I must say the train isn't a bad option to go between the two. You may also know that there's a tram service that runs between Birmingham and Wolverhampton, the Midland Metro, and here at Dudleyport Station we cross over an extension that's currently being built to this metro service. It will run from Wednesbury down to Brierley Hill, where it will terminate at the Merry Hill Shopping Centre. It's using the old South Staffordshire Railway line. This was closed to passengers in 1968, but was used by freight trains till as late as 1993. So fortunately the route has been kept clear and it can be repurposed as this tramway, with the first section due to open in 2024. As we carry on towards Bilston along this incredibly straight section of canal, we come to a bridge which is fairly inconspicuous, but I noticed the name on this bridge was Watery Lane, and that rung a bell. In the BBC One series, Peaky Blinders, Watery Lane was the home of the Shelby family, and it was indeed a real street in Birmingham. But it was actually in the Small Heath area of Birmingham, not here in the Black Country, so it isn't the same lane, but it did remind me of the show, especially as the Peaky Blinders were regular users of the canal network around Birmingham. And staying on the Peaky Blinders theme, a little bit further up the canal, after we've crossed over and gone past the only set of locks on the stretch between Birmingham and Wolverhampton, we come to a junction called Factory Road Junction. This is where the Dudley Canal meets the Birmingham Mainline Canal, and if you were to follow the Dudley Canal, you'd make your way through Dudley, down to Brierley Hill and to Stourbridge. But also you'd pass, not far from here, the Black Country Living Museum, where a lot of scenes from Peaky Blinders were filmed, due to it authentically recreating how life was here back in the early 1900s. Moving on from the Factory Road Junction, the canal becomes considerably quieter, and also becomes a little bit twistier as we make our way towards Coseley. And it's at Coseley that we come across probably the biggest engineering feat on the canal between Wolverhampton and Birmingham, the Coseley Tunnel. The Coseley Tunnel is 329 metres long and bows its way under Coseley town centre. The official Route 81 avoids going through this tunnel by leaving the canal and going through Coseley, but this is definitely something I wanted to explore. So on my way into Birmingham I cycled through the tunnel going south, and on the way back I cycled the official route of 81 so I could compare it to going through the tunnel and see which one would be best. The tunnel certainly feels a little daunting as you enter it, with water streaming down onto the opposite towpath, and the towpath this side is pretty uneven. However, at least it is dry. There's no lighting in the tunnel, but I must say when I first entered I thought that wouldn't be a problem, as I could see the other end and it seemed quite light as I went in. It wasn't long though before the tunnel became very dark towards the centre. This is something I'd definitely recommend using a light for, especially if you're going to do this when it's not full daylight outside. Eventually, as I started to reach the other side of the tunnel, the light began to stream in from the outside, and I did safely make my way through the tunnel without ending up in the canal. So that's what you can expect if you follow the canal and go through the Coseley Tunnel. But let's take a look at the official route of 81 here. Heading north before you get to the tunnel, you're directed right at this fork. At the top of the slope you're directed right and then left down some residential streets. There is a traffic-free section as you make your way through Coseley and down the side of some playing fields, but it did require me to carry my bike over the top of a kissing gate. Then is a small section of busy road before another residential street and making your way back down onto the main line canal. For me personally, I'd always use the tunnel. The signage on the route around the tunnel is not the best, and I did have to check my phone a couple of times to make sure I was on the right route. But now you've seen both options, that's a decision you can make yourself. We continue our way towards Bilston and then on to Wolverhampton city centre. The canal continues to follow a twistier path than it did previously. I wasn't actually 100% sure that Route 81 would get us all the way to Wolverhampton city centre. On the Sustrans map you can see there's a large gap in Route 81 between Bilston and the city centre, and I wasn't sure that there would be a path here for me to follow. But as the canal snaked its way closer to Wolverhampton centre, the towpath continued to be there. There was no break in the route. The canal makes its way past older industrial areas and new housing estates. The skyline of the city centre comes into view as we head towards the train station. The final part of this journey takes us under Wensfield Road and pops us up on the ring road of Wolverhampton city centre, the end of today's journey. So Arkid, it's been Boston. Thank you for joining me. Please drop the video a like if you've enjoyed it and drop a comment. And please do subscribe because it makes a massive difference to the channel and you won't miss any more of my videos on the National Cycle Network. Take care and keep cycling.